He gives off, if you're interested and you're receptive, you'll be drawn to him. You know, there's some other guys in this as well that came from that same hodder. They're all very disadvantaged, and in their own way they've used capoeira. There was a guy, Cobra Mansa, Junanjia. These guys have gone on and really moved into the world, into the arena, and forwarded capoeira in a positive way. But Husu decided to stay. That wasn't his thing. He decided to stay in the Bashada and stay working in the hodder. And thank goodness he did, because it would have diminished for sure. It wouldn't be there anymore. And I think all these guys now kind of look up to Husu, but they look to him and can see the value of what he did. Because obviously when you're travelling the world, etc., you perhaps lose touch of where you've been. And I think Husu has kept a very valuable part of their lives going, and I think they all show a tremendous respect for Husu. And yeah, it's interesting. And things have changed a little bit now in his life. He's that old house that he lived in, that's actually been knocked down. We've managed to sort of construct another house beside it, and it's because that one, he saw the cracks. It didn't have long left.
Didn't look long for this work. I mean, it's an interesting, because I didn't get to meet him, but the first time I saw this film was at the BFI South Bank, and I have to say the projection wasn't as good as here. He said. But I mean, what was his reaction to seeing the finished film? Because he seemed to me a very, I think I already used the phrase, very humble man. But how, was he pleased with the film? Did he?
Absolutely. Yeah. He didn't want to do me a disservice, but he didn't. He said, actually, I didn't think you had it in you.
None of us did that.
To do something, you know, that so kind of comprehensive, but. Actually, it was after the third or fifth showing that he saw it. Actually, he went to Sao Paulo and it got shown 3 times in the film festival there. And there, I think it really dawned on him because he was in his own country and he could talk to his fellow countrymen in his own terms. And he got treated very well at the film festival. And for him, I think it was a big moment. And his wife, actually. Well,
his wife's great. I mean, the other thing that impresses me with the film is I think it has a real balance between intimacy, which is what we're going to talk about now, and operating on a bigger scale, if you like, in terms of the history it gives of not just capoeira but Brazilian culture and Afro-Brazilian culture. But in terms of this intimacy, how did you generate that? Because his wife is a real character, his sons, his disciples who speak with reverence of his work. How did you gain this intimacy? I mean, I'm imagining this comes back to the fact that the film, and we're almost joking about it, took 4 years to complete. And I know that you wrote the film, directed it, and also operated the camera yourself. Was the fact that you were there right at the heart of it what enabled you to become so infiltrated into the people?
I think because I played capoeira for a considerable time, and I went to Caxias because I'd heard about this hodder. I met Husu in London, and he struck me as a very interesting person. And so I went to Caxias, and I thought I knew a lot about capoeira, but quite frankly, I was scared out of my wits when I went there. It was the dynamics of the whole thing was completely different to anything I'd ever seen. And there was a lot of energy coming off this hodder. And so I went there for 3 months, and I didn't even take a camera, nothing. And I thought, you know, I need to ingratiate myself a little bit. And so I got kicked around rather a lot, you know, dripped a bit of blood and got a few bruises. And I think that they then warmed to me a little bit more. And
I'd be right, fine.
Yeah, I think, and as well, the way I sort of filmed, I used to sort of, obviously, I mean, it's not a violent place in comparison to Rio de Janeiro in some of the areas, but it's not like England. So you have to be a little bit careful. So I used to wander around with an old pair of flip-flops and a £10,000 camera in a bin bag. You know, the theory being that if someone sees an expensive bag, they're going to try to rob you. So I think then when they saw me trying to just record things and get involved, and they seem to relax. But not only that, I think generally the psyche in Brazil is different. And when you point a camera at someone in England, people tend to put their hand out. What's in it for me? You know, where you know, what do I get out of this? Brazil, they're just happy that you got interest in them, and it was very easy to work there. There was no great mystery to it. Also, I think when you turn up with 2 or 3 people and a boom operator and a sound guy, it creates a different atmosphere completely. Right. And really, I was just a capoeirista with a camera, and that kind of works in this situation.
And the 4-year making, because it does cover the film covers a long period. I mean, it covers an extensive period. But were there times, because I've seen you and Abby on the making of the film, and there were times where, you know, you were obviously stressed, and the film went through various changes. How great is it to now sort of sit here and see it finally realised on screen? Yeah,
wonderful. It's I still sit here and sometimes think, wow.
Don't make any more changes to it.
No.
You're a tinkerer. That's the.
No. I think it was very. I think it was a big part of my life in the past 4 years, and I'm actually amazed the amount of enthusiasm kept up for the project. But like I said, I think we said earlier, I kind of painted myself into a corner because everyone knew I was making a film about capoeira, and I've got a big mouth, and I kind of said, yeah, I'm making this film, and it kind of, I didn't have any choice really, and to try and make the best film possible, and it took us slightly longer than I thought, but eventually I think we kind of got somewhere close.
Yeah. And to go back to and I will throw it open in a minute, to go back to the kind of epic nature of the project that I spoke about, and I think this is the main difference between this version and the first version that I saw, is that some of the archive footage that you use is absolutely fantastic. So I just wondered, about how you gained access to some of this footage, and whether, you know, what kind of loops you had to go through to get it. But also, how important to you as the director was it that you presented capoeira in terms of its wider social and political context?
It was very important that it got. I think you can't talk about capoeira seriously without putting it in a social context. Otherwise, you just denigrate what is something very special, and you put it in a contemporary context, which is a sport, which is the perception worldwide of capoeira now. People just throw on a t-shirt and they're a capoeirista, and capoeirista, that is, in certain terms, that is a good thing because it's benefiting socially. People are able to travel, people wouldn't necessarily get these opportunities. So in that sense, it's a very, very good thing. But when you talk about capoeira in a serious sense, you need to talk about it socially, and where it sits in its social context, and in the context with other cultural manifestations. And the other question
it was just the access to the footage, because some of it was astonishing. Quite
amazing. It's because I went to the National Archive, and for 20 years there had been a state-sponsored media, right. Globo, which is like the BBC in Brazil, is still going, and that's part of the mechanism that was set up. And so there was state-sponsored media, basically. So it's very cheap to buy, very accessible once you actually sort of make the right connections, become friendly with the people within. Otherwise, it's just just piles of papers in Portuguese, and even the people that are helping you out, they don't really know what's going on. So really, you need to sort of form some sort of relationships with people. And it's an absolute mess. There is no digitisation of this. It's just, you watch VHS, you slot it in the machine. There's an old book you go through, and it roughly will say where something is and what it's about, but generally that's wrong. So in the end, I used to just go into the National Archive, sit there and put it 4 times as quick, and sit there until something caught my eye, and stop, go back, make a note. And so it's that's one of the big pluses of filmmaking in Brazil, is the fact that you can acquire this kind of archive pretty cheap from the National Archive. And so that was very interesting. And to be honest with you, I bought a lot of archive. I mean, we got a lot of archive, about an hour, in sort of 2-minute slots and whatever, but quite a lot, because I didn't really know which direction I was going to go. So I just tried to cover all bases and bought as much as anything that caught and looked pretty to me, actually.
In which way do you mean you didn't know which way you were going to go?
Well, I kind of knew. If I'm totally honest, I don't actually write anything down, which is not very good, I'm told. Most people make a big timeline and they work everything out, but unfortunately I don't really do that. Right. I mean, I've tried, it just doesn't sit well with me. So I just tend to sort of formulate what I want to get across and then work from there, and just get things that... I used to be a painter and paint pictures rather badly, but it actually kind of created this sort of... this mindset within me that, aesthetically things are need to be done in the right way. So it was just really sort of getting a palette of things to work with in the future that might lend itself. And quite a lot of the materials left out. I mean, there's a lot been left out, which could have been of use. But yeah, it worked out okay.
I mean, I'd imagine that people that come to this film, and I know that there are people here tonight that do have an extensive knowledge of capoeira. As I said, I didn't, and what I took away from the film was both a respect for the people and an understanding, as I said, of the politics and the social situation. But what are you kind of? It's always difficult when you ask a filmmaker what they want people to take away, because you don't want it to be prescriptive. But what's your major ambition that somebody watching this film that had no understanding of capoeira would gain from it?
That they won't see capoeira as just a sport, as something that is just, oh yeah, that's capoeira, we've seen that, that's BBC.
Yeah.